What's up, story lovers? Welcome to Harryverse X. In today's video, we have a fantastic tale for you. What if Percy Jackson rescued Harry from the Dursleys at age 4 and trained him as his demigod brother at Camp Half-Blood? If this is your first time here, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you never miss a story. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for your continued support. Alright, let's jump right into it. Chapter 1, The Lightning Child. I seriously hate England. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days straight, and my shoes squelched with every step I took down Privet Drive. Just another glamorous day in the life of Percy Jackson, monster hunter extraordinaire. Well, technically I was tracking a nest of harpies that had been causing trouble across Western Europe, but monster hunter sounds way cooler when I explain these trips to Mom. All the houses look exactly the same, I muttered, squinting at the cookie-cutter suburban homes lining the street. Number 4 was supposedly where the weird energy signature was coming from, according to Grover's nature magic tracking. My hand instinctively touched Riptide in my pocket as I approached the perfectly manicured lawn of Number 4. Something was definitely off here. The air felt charged, like right before a massive thunderstorm. But it wasn't just that familiar demigod energy I was used to, there was something else, something I couldn't quite place. A shrill voice pierced through the rain. "Boy! What did I tell you about making a mess?" I crept closer to a window and peered inside. A horse-faced woman was towering over a tiny kid with messy black hair and, holy Hades, the greenest eyes I'd ever seen on a human. But they weren't like mine. They had something else in them, something electric. The kid couldn't have been more than 4 years old, skinny as a rail, swimming in clothes that looked 5 sizes too big. He was frantically trying to clean up what looked like spilled juice while the woman kept screeching. "Worthless, just like your parents. We took you in out of the goodness of our hearts." She raised her hand, and I nearly burst through the window right then, but what happened next froze me in place. The kid looked up, scared but also, angry. The lights flickered throughout the house. Outside, the rain suddenly pounded harder, and I could have sworn I saw the faintest blue glow around the kid's hands. The juice that had spilled. It rose off the floor and hovered in midair for a split second before splashing back down. "What did you do?" the woman shrieked, backing away like she'd seen a ghost. "Vernon! He's doing it again." A walrus of a man thundered into the room. "That's it, boy. In the cupboard, now." I'd seen enough. This wasn't just a random energy signature. This kid was a demigod, no doubt about it. But the floating juice? That was something else entirely. And the storm connection, Zeus, maybe? I waited until dark, watching the house, planning my move. The huge man and Horseface eventually went upstairs with what looked like their own kid, a pudgy boy who'd spent dinner shoving cake into his mouth while the green-eyed kid got nothing. The small one had been locked in a cupboard under the stairs. A freaking cupboard. Breaking in was laughably easy. These mortals had no concept of security beyond their precious normal appearances. The lock on the cupboard door was child's play, literally designed to lock a child in, not keep someone like me out. When I opened it, the tiny kid was curled up on a thin mattress, not even crying. Just staring at the wall with those electric green eyes. "Hey," I whispered. "I'm Percy. I'm here to help." He blinked at me, suspicious. "Smart kid. Are you real?" he asked in the smallest voice I'd ever heard. "Last time I checked," I said, trying for a reassuring smile. "What's your name?" "Harry," he said. "Harry Potter. Well, Harry Potter, how would you like to get out of here?" His eyes widened. "They said no one would want me." Something in my chest tightened. They lied about that. And probably a lot of other things too. A thunderclap shook the house, and the lights flickered again. But this time, I noticed something I'd missed before, a faint scar on Harry's forehead. It was shaped like a lightning bolt. "Subtle, Dad. Look, Harry, this is going to sound crazy, but you're special. Different. And I know somewhere you can be safe. Somewhere with people like us. Like, freaks, he asked, and I wanted to go upstairs and introduce the Dursleys to Riptide. Like heroes, I corrected. Your dad, one of your parents was someone really important. His eyes lit up. My dad? Aunt Petunia says he was a drunk who died in a car crash. Yeah, that's definitely not true, I said, anger bubbling up. Listen, we don't have much time. Do you want to come with me? I promise you'll never have to come back here. Harry hesitated for only a second before nodding. I don't have anything to bring. That's okay. We'll get you new stuff. I held out my hand, and he took it. His fingers were ice cold. Can you be really quiet while we leave? Like a spy mission. That got a ghost of a smile. I'm good at being quiet. We crept through the house, but just as we reached the front door, a floorboard creaked upstairs. Harry froze, his hand tightening in mine. It's okay, I whispered. We're almost out. That's when we heard the thundering footsteps. Boy! Who's down there? Run! I scooped Harry up and bolted out the door just as Vernon Dursley appeared at the top of the stairs, face purple with rage. The rain was still coming down in sheets as I ran down Privet Drive with Harry clinging to me like a koala. The air smelled like ozone, and the storm seemed to intensify with every step we took. Definitely Zeus's kid. The question was, why had he been left with these horrible mortals? Stop! Thief! Vernon was at the door now, screaming into the night. I ducked between houses, putting as much distance as possible between us and number 4. Harry's face was buried against my neck, his whole body trembling. It's okay, buddy, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I got you. I made it several blocks before I had to stop to catch my breath. Setting Harry down under the shelter of a bus stop, I checked to make sure we weren't being followed. Are we in trouble? Harry asked, his voice small. Nah, that guy couldn't catch a cold, I said, trying to lighten the mood. But we should keep moving. I've got a friend waiting in London. He'll help us get back to America. America? Harry's eyes went round. That's across the ocean. Yep. That's where Camp Half-Blood is, the place I was telling you about. It's for special kids like you. What makes me special? He looked down at his oversized clothes and skinny arms. I crouched to his level. You ever make things happen? Things you can't explain. Like when you got angry at your aunt, and the juice floated? Harry's mouth fell open. You saw that? They said I was making it up. I saw it. And I've seen stuff like that before. Not exactly like that, actually, but close enough. It happens because of who your dad is. My dad. But he's dead. I sighed. This was always the tricky part. One of your parents was a god. Like, from the old stories. That's why you can do things other kids can't. Harry stared at me for a long moment, then, to my surprise, he giggled. That's silly. Gods aren't real. Said the kid who just made juice float, I pointed out with a grin. Trust me, they're real. And super dramatic. And sometimes they have kids with mortals, regular people. Those kids are called demigods. I'm one too. My dad is Poseidon, god of the sea. Another thunderclap, this one right overhead, making both of us jump. Is that him? Your dad? Harry asked, eyes wide. No, that would be your dad, I think. Zeus, lord of the sky. God of thunder and lightning. I pointed to his scar. You've kind of got his signature right there. Harry's hand flew to his forehead, touching the lightning bolt scar with wonder. But Aunt Petunia said I got this in the car crash. Yeah, we're going to find out the real story, I promised. But first, we need to get moving. It's not safe for demigods to stay in one place too long, especially not with your scent. My scent? Monsters can smell demigods. And you, my little friend, smell like a 5-course meal to them. Harry wrinkled his nose. That's gross. I laughed. Come on, lightning boy. Our ride should be nearby. I picked him up again, and we continued through the rainy suburban streets until we reached a more commercial area where I'd arranged to meet my contact. Harry was surprisingly light for a 4-year-old, barely weighing anything in my arms. Note to self, feed the kid as soon as possible. As we approached the rendezvous point, something moved in the shadows across the street. I tensed, shifting Harry to one arm while reaching for Riptide. What's wrong? Harry whispered. Probably nothing, I lied, scanning the darkness. The shape moved again, faster this time, darting between streetlights. Then another joined it from the opposite direction. Percy. Harry's voice trembled. It's okay, I said automatically, uncapping Riptide. The celestial bronze sword sprang to full length, glowing faintly in the rain. Harry gasped. How did you do that? Magic sword. Standard demigod equipment. I tried to keep my voice light while backing toward a wall. Harry, if anything happens, I need you to run to that diner across the street and ask for someone named Ben, okay? Tell him Percy sent you. But, the first monster lunged from the shadows, a harpy, just as I'd suspected, with leathery wings and talons that could shred metal. I swung Riptide in a wide arc, keeping Harry behind me. You smell the boy, son of Poseidon, the harpy hissed. Give him to us, and we'll let you live. Yeah, not happening, I shot back. Why don't you fly back to whatever rock you crawled out from under? The harpy shrieked and dived toward us. I slashed upward, catching her wing, but the second harpy attacked from the side. I had to drop and roll, keeping Harry protected against my chest. Percy! Harry cried as we tumbled across the wet pavement. Run to the diner. I shouted, shoving him toward the street. Go! But Harry didn't run. Instead, his face scrunched up in concentration, and the air around us grew heavy with electricity. The harpies sensed it too, hesitating mid-attack. What is he? One of them growled. I didn't have time to answer because at that moment, lightning struck. Not near us, directly through Harry, using him as a conductor before blasting outward and hitting both harpies. They didn't even have time to scream before they disintegrated into dust. The silence afterward was deafening. Harry stood there, his two big clothes smoking slightly, looking as shocked as I felt. Did I do that? He whispered. I nodded, speechless for once. I'd seen children of Zeus summon lightning before, but never like this, never at 4 years old, and never with such precision. The lightning hadn't even singed me, standing less than 3 feet away. You definitely did, I finally managed. And it was awesome. But also, we really need to get moving now. I scooped him up again, and this time I ran full speed toward the diner, not stopping until we were inside the warm, fluorescent-lit space. A couple of late-night patrons glanced up at us, a soaking wet teenager carrying a small child, but quickly returned to their meals. Classic British politeness. Ben. I called, scanning the nearly empty diner. A man in the back booth raised his hand. He looked ordinary enough, middle-aged, with a worn leather jacket and graying beard, but I knew better. Ben was a satyr who'd been living undercover in London for decades, helping demigods get safely to camp. You're late, he grumbled as we slid into the booth. His eyes widened when he saw Harry. Is this? Oh my gods, I can smell him from here. Yeah, about that, I said, keeping my voice low. He's a little stronger than your average demigod. Just took out 2 harpies with a lightning bolt. Ben choked on his coffee. He did what? How old is he? I'm 4, Harry said proudly, holding up 4 fingers. Almost 5. Ben and I exchanged looks. We need to get him to camp, I said. Like, yesterday. I've got the transport arranged, Ben nodded. Ferry to France tonight, then a series of safe houses until we reach the extraction point for the flight to New York. Flight? I grimaced. Zeus isn't exactly my biggest fan. Zeus? Harry perked up. Percy says that's my dad. Ben's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into his hairline. Zeus? Are you sure? I gestured to Harry's forehead. Lightning scar, controls electricity, made a storm follow us all the way here, what would you guess? Fair point, Ben conceded. But that's not the only unusual thing about him, is it? I can sense something else, something I've never felt from a demigod before. I nodded. Yeah, I saw him do some kind of telekinesis with Juice earlier. Definitely not a standard Zeus power pack. Percy, you don't think he could be, food first, theories later, I interrupted, noticing how Harry's eyes were drooping despite his obvious efforts to stay alert. This kid hasn't had a proper meal in who knows how long. Ben waved over a waitress and ordered a stack of pancakes, eggs, and toast. While we waited, I used a napkin to clean some of the monster dust off Harry's face. You were really brave back there, I told him. Most kids would have been screaming their heads off. Harry shrugged. Uncle Vernon is scarier than those bird ladies. My jaw tightened. Well, you never have to see him again. I promise. The food arrived, and Harry stared at the heaping plate like he couldn't believe it was all for him. Go on, I encouraged. It's all yours. He took a tentative bite of pancake, then started eating with the focused determination of someone who didn't know when their next meal would come. It broke my heart a little. So, Ben said quietly while Harry ate, what's the plan? Take him straight to camp. What else can we do? You saw what happened with just 2 harpies. Once word gets out that there's a child of the big 3, Zeus, no less, out in the open, every monster on the eastern seaboard will be hunting him. But there's something else going on here, Ben insisted. The energy coming off him. Percy, it's not just godly. It's something else entirely. One crisis at a time, I said, watching Harry practically inhale his eggs. First, we get him safe. Then we figure out why Zeus left his kid with the worst mortals in England. By the time Harry finished eating, his eyelids were drooping dangerously. I paid the bill with some of the emergency cash Chiron had given me for the harpy hunting expedition. This probably wasn't what he had in mind when he sent me to Europe, but finding a child of Zeus took priority over a nest of harpies any day. Our ferry leaves in 2 hours, Ben said, checking his watch. We should head to the terminal. I nodded, sliding out of the booth. Come on, buddy. Time for the next part of our adventure. Harry yawned hugely but reached for my hand without hesitation. Something warm spread through my chest. This kid already trusted me completely, and I was not going to let him down. The rain had finally stopped when we stepped outside, but the air still smelled like a storm. We caught a cab to the ferry terminal, Harry falling asleep against my side within minutes. Percy, Ben said quietly, you know there are protocols for finding new demigods. Chiron usually sends satyrs first, then a retrieval team if necessary. You can't just, they had him in a cupboard, Ben, I cut him off. A cupboard under the stairs. Like he was a broom or something. Protocol can wait. Ben sighed but didn't argue further. At the terminal, we boarded the overnight ferry to Calais without incident. Our cabin was tiny but clean, with 2 narrow bunks. I tucked Harry into the bottom one, his small body nearly lost in the standard-sized bedding. Is he really going to be safe at camp? Ben asked as we watched Harry sleep. A child of Zeus this powerful, the others will notice. And there hasn't been a child of the big 3 at camp since me, I know, I said. But he's safer there than anywhere else. And he needs training. You saw what he did to those harpies. That's what worries me, Ben muttered. No 4-year-old demigod should have that kind of power, Percy. Not even a child of Zeus. I couldn't argue with that. Everything about Harry Potter was unusual, from his power level to that lightning scar to the weird telekinesis thing. But looking at him now, peaceful in sleep for probably the first time in years, I knew I'd made the right call. Get some rest, Ben advised. I'll take first watch. I nodded, climbing onto the top bunk but not really expecting to sleep. My mind was racing with questions. Why had Zeus broken the pact to have Harry? Why leave him with those awful mortals? And what was the other power Ben had sensed? I must have dozed off eventually because the next thing I knew, the cabin was filled with early morning light, and Harry was tugging at my arm. Percy! There's a sea monster. I bolted upright, nearly braining myself on the ceiling. What? Where? Harry pointed to the porthole. In the water. It was huge and green. I looked out at the calm English Channel, seeing nothing but gentle waves. Are you sure it wasn't just a big fish? It had 3 heads, Harry said solemnly. I exchanged looks with Ben, who was already up and packing our few belongings. 3 heads isn't great. No, it isn't, he agreed. We should get above deck. If something's following us, I want room to maneuver. I helped Harry into his shoes, still the oversized hand-me-downs from his cousin, and we headed up to the main deck. The ferry was about halfway across the channel, open water surrounding us on all sides. Perfect monster hunting grounds. Stay close, I told Harry, keeping one hand on his shoulder and the other near Riptide in my pocket. Are there really sea monsters? Harry asked, eyes wide with more excitement than fear. Unfortunately, yes. Lots of them. But don't worry, sea is my territory. If anything comes at us, I've got it covered. As if on cue, the water about 50 yards from the ferry suddenly churned. Passengers rushed to the railing, thinking it might be dolphins, but I knew better. I pulled Harry back from the edge just as 3 serpentine heads burst from the waves. Told you. Harry gasped. 3 heads. That's a hydra, Ben muttered. A sea hydra. What's it doing this far north? Hunting, I said grimly, watching the monster pace alongside the ferry. Its head swayed back and forth, sniffing the air. Looking for us. Most of the mortal passengers were pointing and taking photos, probably seeing some kind of rare whale or oversized dolphins thanks to the mist. But the hydra was getting closer, and soon it would attack, mist or no mist. We need a distraction, I said, scanning the deck. What about me? Harry offered. I can do the lightning thing again. Absolutely not, I said firmly. That's a last resort. Using powers like that drains you, and you're already running on empty. Besides, lightning over open water with innocent people around. Recipe for disaster. Harry looked disappointed but nodded. Smart kid. I've got an idea, Ben said. Get everyone to the other side of the boat. I raised an eyebrow. And how do we do that? Ben grinned and pulled out a reed pipe. Watch and learn, son of Poseidon. He began to play a jaunty tune that somehow carried over the sound of waves and engines. At first, nothing happened. Then, gradually, passengers started drifting toward the opposite railing, as if drawn by the music. Within minutes, our side of the deck was empty except for us. Nice trick, I admitted. Pan's favorite, Ben said, tucking the pipe away. Now, about that hydra. The monster was close enough now that I could see its scales gleaming beneath the surface. Each of its 3 heads had razor-sharp teeth and glowing yellow eyes that scanned the boat hungrily. We didn't have much time. Ben, get Harry to the lifeboats, I said, uncapping Riptide. I'll distract Ugly over there. Percy, no. Harry grabbed my leg. It'll eat you. I ruffled his hair. Trust me, I've dealt with worse. Go with Ben, okay? I'll meet you by the lifeboats in 5 minutes. Harry reluctantly let go, and Ben led him away, glancing back worriedly. I turned to face the Hydra, which had now risen fully from the water, its heads weaving hypnotically just yards from the ferry. "Hey, Three-Face!" I shouted. "Looking for someone?" All three heads swiveled toward me, hissing in unison. Not my most creative taunt, but it got the job done. I concentrated, feeling the familiar tug in my gut as I connected with the water below. The ferry was moving too fast for me to control its course, but I could use the water itself. The Hydra lunged, one head shooting forward while the other two flanked it. I rolled aside, slashing with Riptide as the central head snapped at the space where I'd just been. The blade connected, and the head reeled back, golden ichor dripping from the wound. "Come on," I muttered. "Just a little closer." The Hydra reared back, gathering itself for another strike. That's when I made my move. With a yell, I summoned a massive wave that slammed into the monster from behind, pushing it toward the ferry, and me. As it tumbled forward, off balance, I leaped onto the railing and drove Riptide down with all my might, aiming for the base where all three necks connected. The Hydra shrieked, its heads thrashing wildly. One caught me across the chest, sending me flying backward onto the deck. Pain exploded along my ribs, but I forced myself to my feet. The Hydra was wounded but not defeated, and now it was seriously angry. "Percy!" Harry's voice came from somewhere behind me. "The water. Use the water." I glanced back to see that he'd broken away from Ben and was running toward me, his face determined. "Harry, stay back!" I shouted, but it was too late. The Hydra had spotted him. All three heads locked onto Harry, and the monster surged forward with renewed purpose. I lunged to intercept, but I was too far away. There was no way I'd reach him in time. That's when Harry did something I still can't fully explain. He thrust his hands forward, and the air around them seemed to ripple. But instead of lightning this time, a jet of pure water erupted from the ocean, wrapping around the Hydra like a giant fist and squeezing. My jaw dropped. Water control was my domain, not Zeus's. What the heck was going on? The Hydra struggled against the watery grip, but Harry's face was scrunched up in fierce concentration, refusing to let go. I seized the opportunity, charging forward and leaping onto the trapped monster's back. With one clean strike, I severed all three heads at once. The Hydra dissolved into golden dust, which scattered across the deck and into the sea. The water Harry had controlled splashed back down, leaving him standing there, breathing hard but looking triumphant. "I did it," he exclaimed. "I helped." "You?" "Yeah, you definitely helped," I said, staring at him in amazement. "How did you do that?" "The water thing?" Harry frowned. "I don't know. I just wanted to help, and I remembered you said the sea was your thing, so I thought maybe." Ben hurried over to us, his expression a mixture of relief and shock. "That's impossible," he muttered. "A child of Zeus controlling water? Unless..." "Unless what?" I demanded. "Unless he's not just Zeus's kid," Ben said quietly. "Percy, I think we might be dealing with something unprecedented here." I looked at Harry, who was now examining the sprinkling of monster dust on his sleeve with fascination. A 4-year-old who could summon lightning and control water. Plus that weird telekinesis thing back at the Dursleys. What exactly had we stumbled into? "Let's discuss this later," I decided, noticing concerned crew members heading our way. "We need to get off this boat before someone starts asking questions about the whale that mysteriously disappeared." We managed to make it through the rest of the journey without incident, though I noticed Harry kept experimentally flicking his fingers at his water bottle, making the contents slosh around without touching it. Each time, the effort left him a little more drained, and by the time we reached Calais, he was falling asleep on his feet again. "One demigod power is exhausting enough for a kid his age," Ben commented as I carried a sleeping Harry through the terminal. "If he's trying to manage multiple, no wonder he's wiped out." But how is it possible? I asked. Even if he somehow had two godly parents, which isn't possible, by the way, Zeus and Poseidon's powers don't usually mix. No, Ben agreed. They don't. But there's something else at play here. That energy I sensed. Percy, I think Harry might be more than just a demigod. Before I could ask what he meant, Harry stirred in my arms. Are we in France now? Yep, buddy. One country down, a whole ocean to go. His eyes widened. We're really going to America. That's the plan. There's a special place there called Camp Half-Blood. It's where kids like us learn to be heroes. Will there be other kids like me? I hesitated. There will be other demigods, yeah. But I don't think there's anyone quite like you, Harry. That seemed to satisfy him, and he settled back against my shoulder as we made our way to the safe house Ben had arranged. The next few days passed in a blur of trains, safe houses, and constant vigilance. Harry proved to be a resilient travel companion, taking each new experience in stride. His wide-eyed wonder at simple things like vending machines and escalators reminded me how little of the world he'd been allowed to see at the Dursleys. We had one more close call in Frankfurt when a pack of hellhounds picked up our scent, but between my sword skills and Ben's woodland magic, we managed to dispatch them without Harry having to use his powers. I was grateful for that. Each time he did, it seemed to drain him more than it should. Finally, we reached the extraction point, a private airfield outside of Athens. Chiron had arranged for a special flight, meaning one blessed by Zeus himself to prevent him from blasting me out of the sky. I'd sent an iris message ahead explaining we had a young son of Zeus with us, which apparently was enough to secure safe passage. This is cutting into my retirement fund, grumbled our pilot, an older demigod son of Hermes who specialized in emergency extractions. Express flight to Long Island with anti-monster shielding doesn't come cheap. Bill Chiron, I suggested, helping Harry buckle his seatbelt. Trust me, once he meets our special cargo, he won't mind. The flight was mercifully uneventful, though Harry spent most of it with his face pressed to the window, marveling at the clouds and ocean below. I used the time to explain more about Camp Half-Blood and what to expect when we arrived. So everyone there is a hero? He asked, eyes shining. Well, hero in training, I clarified. Some have done heroic things already. Others are still learning. But everyone's special in some way. Will they like me? The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. They'll love you, kid. And anyone who doesn't will have to answer to me, got it? He nodded solemnly. Got it. We landed at a small airstrip near Montauk and transferred to a camp van for the final leg of our journey. Harry was practically vibrating with excitement by the time we crested Half-Blood Hill and the valley spread out below us. There it is, I said, pointing to the collection of cabins, the arena, the dining pavilion, and the big house. Home sweet home. It's beautiful, Harry breathed. As we approached the big house, I spotted Chiron in his centaur form on the porch, clearly waiting for us. Annabeth stood beside him, arms crossed but curiosity evident in her gray eyes. A small crowd of campers had gathered nearby, word having spread that Percy Jackson was returning with a mysterious young demigod. Showtime, I muttered to Harry as we stepped out of the van. Stay close, okay? He nodded, suddenly shy in the face of so many new people. His small hand found mine and gripped tight. Percy Jackson, Chiron called, trotting forward to meet us. I see your harpy hunt took an unexpected turn. You could say that, I agreed. Chiron, this is Harry Potter. Harry, this is Chiron, Activities Director and Trainer of Heroes. Harry's eyes went round as saucers as he took in Chiron's horse half. You're a centaur, yes, Chiron smiled kindly. And you, young man, have caused quite a stir on Olympus. The son of Zeus, returning to us after all this time. Whispers erupted among the gathered campers. A son of Zeus was big news, especially one so young. About that, I said, lowering my voice. There's something else going on with Harry. He's not just a son of Zeus. He can control water, Chiron. And he did some kind of telekinesis thing that definitely wasn't a Zeus power. Chiron's expression grew serious. I suspected as much from your message. Come, let's continue this discussion inside. We followed him into the big house, Annabeth falling into step beside me. A son of Zeus who controls water, she whispered. That's impossible. Tell that to the Hydra he helped me take down, I replied. Inside, Mr. D was playing solitaire at the ping-pong table, looking thoroughly uninterested in our arrival. But I noticed his eyes flick to Harry with unusual sharpness before returning to his cards. So this is the newest brat, he drawled. Bit scrawny, isn't he? Harry, to my surprise, stepped forward and met Mr. D's gaze directly. I'm Harry Potter, sir. Are you a god too? Mr. D raised an eyebrow. Well, at least this one has manners. Yes, boy, I am Dionysus, god of wine and revelry, currently serving time in this summer camp for delinquent demigods. Cool, Harry said simply. The corner of Mr. D's mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. We'll see how cool you find it after a few years, Peter Johnson. It's Harry Potter, Harry corrected. Whatever. Mr. D waved a hand dismissively, but there was something calculating in his gaze. Chiron cleared his throat. Perhaps a demonstration of what you mentioned, Percy. I nodded and set a glass of water on the table. Harry, can you show them what you did on the ferry? Just a little bit, okay? Harry bit his lip, then concentrated on the glass. The water rose in a wobbly column, hovering for a moment before splashing back down. The room went dead silent. Annabeth was the first to recover. That's a Poseidon ability. No child of Zeus has ever been able to manipulate water. And that's not all, I added. He summoned lightning that took out 2 harpies in one shot. And he made juice float at his relative's house, like, telekinetically. Most unusual, Chiron murmured. I've never seen anything quite like it. Mr. D suddenly looked more interested. The boy has a strange aura. Not just godly. Something else, something almost familiar, yet not. Harry was starting to look overwhelmed by all the scrutiny. I put a protective hand on his shoulder. Whatever's going on, he's still just a kid who needs training and a safe place to grow up, I said firmly. The Dursleys, the mortals who had him, they were horrible to him. Chiron nodded thoughtfully. Of course, Percy. Harry's safety and well-being are our primary concerns. Though I suspect Zeus will want to claim him officially at tonight's campfire. As if on cue, thunder rumbled overhead. I think that's a yes, Annabeth said dryly. After getting Harry settled in the Hermes cabin temporarily, as was tradition for new arrivals until their godly parent claimed them, I took him on a tour of camp. His eyes grew wider with each new sight, the lava wall, the Pegasus stables, the armory. By the time we reached the dining pavilion for dinner, he was practically floating with excitement. And I really get to stay here, he kept asking. Really, I assured him. This is your home now. Dinner was a lively affair, with Harry seated at the Hermes table but receiving curious glances from every cabin. I noticed the Athena kids in particular were watching him with intense speculation, no doubt already formulating theories about his unusual abilities. When it was time for the campfire, Harry stuck close to my side. The flames rose high and bright, reflecting the excitement of the campers as they sang ridiculous songs about grandmothers dressing for battle. Chiron stamped his hoof for silence as the singing wound down. Heroes. Today we welcome a new camper to our ranks. Harry Potter. Cheers erupted, making Harry blush and shrink against me. It's okay, I whispered. They're just excited to meet you. Chiron continued, as some of you may have heard, Harry appears to be a son of Zeus, though his full parentage remains. He didn't get to finish because at that moment, the air above Harry's head crackled with electricity. A brilliant blue lightning bolt appeared, glowing so brightly that many campers had to shield their eyes. But that wasn't all. A moment later, a second symbol shimmered into existence beside it, a green trident. Gasps and shocked murmurs spread through the crowd. Two claiming symbols. Impossible. It is determined, Chiron announced, his voice betraying his own amazement as he knelt. The entire camp followed suit, dropping to one knee. Hail, Harry Potter, son of Zeus, lord of the sky, god of thunder and lightning. He paused, clearly uncertain how to proceed with the unprecedented second symbol. And, blessed by Poseidon, Earthshaker, Stormbringer, father of horses. He glanced at me, confusion evident in his ancient eyes. Welcome, young hero, to Camp Half-Blood. Harry looked up at the symbols, then at the kneeling campers, then at me. What does it mean, Percy? I knelt beside him, placing both hands on his shoulders. It means you're special, buddy. More special than any of us realized. And it means. I took a deep breath. It means we're brothers. Sort of. His face lit up with a joy so pure it made my heart ache. Brothers? Really? Really, I promised, pulling him into a hug. And brothers look out for each other. Always. Over Harry's head, I met Chiron's troubled gaze. We both knew that a child claimed by Zeus but blessed by Poseidon was unprecedented, and likely dangerous. The rivalry between our fathers meant Harry would be walking a tightrope between two of the most powerful and temperamental gods. But right then, with Harry's skinny arms wrapped around my neck and his face buried against my shoulder, none of that mattered. I had made him a promise on Privet Drive, and I intended to keep it. He would never go back to that cupboard. He would never be unloved or unwanted again. As the campfire continued around us, the flames shifting to a curious mix of blue and green, I silently vowed to protect this kid with everything I had. Zeus's son. Poseidon's blessing. My little brother. Welcome home, Harry, I whispered. Chapter 2, Storm Warning. 5 years can change a lot. For one thing, I was 22 now, splitting my time between college in New Rome and helping out at Camp Half-Blood. For another, the scrawny 4-year-old I'd rescued from a cupboard had grown into a wiry 9-year-old with a knack for finding trouble that rivaled even my own legendary talent. Harry! I shouted, ducking as a stray bolt of electricity zapped past my head and fried a nearby tree. Focus on controlling the intensity, not just the direction. Sorry. Harry called back, his face scrunched in concentration. Sweat beaded on his forehead beneath the messy black hair that never seemed to lie flat. The lightning bolt scar stood out stark white against his skin when he got tired like this. We were in the forest clearing we'd unofficially dubbed the Storm Ground, a safe practice space away from the main camp where Harry could work on his more destructive abilities without accidentally barbecuing other campers. 5 years of training had given him decent control over his Zeus powers, but when he tried combining them with his Poseidon-gifted abilities, well, that's when things got interesting. Try again, I encouraged. But this time, imagine the lightning as a river flowing through you, not a bomb going off. Harry nodded, took a deep breath, and raised his hand. The air crackled around his fingers, a familiar ozone scent filling the clearing. A small ball of electricity formed in his palm, dancing and sputtering but relatively stable. Good, I said. Now add the water element, slowly. This was the tricky part. Harry had gotten pretty good at summoning lightning and manipulating water separately, but combining them usually ended in disaster. He reached toward the creek with his other hand, and a tendril of water rose in response, snaking through the air toward him. Easy, easy. I coached, ready to dive for cover if necessary. For a brief, hopeful moment, the water and electricity hovered near each other without interacting, Harry maintaining control of both. Then his face twitched with effort, and everything went sideways. The lightning jumped to the water, supercharging it instantly. The electrified water whip lashed wildly, slicing through a boulder before Harry lost control completely. There was a sound like a thunder crack, and I was knocked flat on my back as water sprayed everywhere. Schist. I rolled to my feet, soaking wet but unharmed. Harry? You okay? A groan came from where Harry had been standing. I found him sitting in a small crater, hair standing on end and glasses askew, looking dazed but otherwise intact. That wasn't right, was it? He asked. I laughed, helping him up. Not exactly what we were going for, no. But hey, if you ever need to explode a boulder, you've got that covered. He grinned sheepishly, adjusting his glasses. It's like they're fighting each other inside me. The lightning wants to go up and out, but the water wants to flow and curve. That makes sense, I said, wringing water from my shirt. Zeus and Poseidon aren't exactly known for playing well together. That was the understatement of the century. In the 5 years since Harry's unusual claiming, we'd pieced together bits of the puzzle but still had more questions than answers. Zeus had confirmed Harry was his son, born to a mortal witch named Lily Potter. The Poseidon blessing was more mysterious. My father had merely stated that circumstances demanded intervention, when I'd finally gotten the courage to ask him directly during a rare visit. What those circumstances were, no one would say, though I had my suspicions it had something to do with the prophecy Chiron and Mr. D occasionally whispered about when they thought no one was listening. Percy. Harry's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Do you think I'll ever figure it out? How to use both powers together? I ruffled his hair, which was somehow already dry despite the explosion of water. Another weird Harry quirk, water never stayed on him long, just like me. Course you will. It took me years to master my powers, and I only had one god's worth to deal with. You're trying to balance two opposing forces. That's next level stuff. But what if I can't? The insecurity in his voice reminded me of the 4-year-old I'd found in that cupboard. Despite 5 years of camp life, surrounded by friends and basically being the most interesting demigod of his generation, Harry still had moments where the Dursleys' emotional damage showed through. I crouched to his level, hands on his shoulders. Listen up, lightning boy. You're the kid who disintegrated 2 harpies at age 4. You helped me take down a hydra before you even knew what a demigod was. There's nothing you can't handle. His green eyes, so like mine but with that electric quality unique to him, brightened. Really? Really? Now come on, we're late for Capture the Flag, and Annabeth will kill me if her team has to start without their secret weapon. We jogged back toward camp, Harry keeping pace easily. Years of training had transformed him from that malnourished kid into a surprisingly athletic 9-year-old. He wasn't big for his age, probably never would be thanks to those early years of neglect, but he was fast and agile, a natural at both swordplay and the modified trident I'd helped him design that could channel both his godly powers. Will I get to use my powers during the game? Harry asked eagerly. Limited amounts, I reminded him. No frying other campers, remember? Chiron was pretty clear after what happened to the Apollo cabin last time. Harry winced. That was an accident. Will forgave me. Only after you promised to help in the infirmary for a month, I pointed out. Just stick to basic lightning for intimidation and minor water tricks. No combining unless it's an emergency. Fine, he sighed dramatically. But the Ares kids are so mean about it. They keep calling me Sparky Pants when you're not around. I grinned. Want me to tell you what they used to call me? His eyes lit up. Yes. Another time, I laughed as we reached the edge of the forest. The camp spread out before us, the familiar strawberry fields, the gleaming white Greek buildings, the ring of cabins centered around the hearth fire. Home. Harry had his own space in the Zeus cabin technically, but he spent most nights in the Poseidon cabin with me when I was at camp. Chiron had bent the rules after the first few months when it became clear that Harry struggled with nightmares if he slept alone in that big, empty temple to Zeus. Besides, it just made sense, I was his designated guardian, approved by both Zeus and Poseidon in a rare moment of cooperation. Campers were already gathering for Capture the Flag, strapping on armor and choosing weapons. Annabeth spotted us and jogged over, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, gray eyes assessing us immediately. "You're late," she said, but she was smiling. "And why are you wet, seaweed brain?" "Training mishap," I explained. "Harry's getting stronger." Annabeth looked impressed. "Good timing. We need all the firepower we can get against Clarice's team. She's allied with half the camp this time." Harry beamed at the implicit praise. He'd practically worshipped Annabeth from day one, following her around and asking endless questions about architecture and battle strategy. She'd been wary of him at first. A child with powers from both Zeus and Poseidon represented a lot of unknown variables, but his earnest enthusiasm had eventually won her over. "What's our strategy?" Harry asked, bouncing on his toes. Annabeth lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Red team thinks we'll put you on defense because of last time. But today, you're our secret offensive weapon. Percy will lead the main assault as a distraction, while you and I slip behind their lines through the creek bed." Harry's eyes widened. "So I can use my water powers?" "Precisely," Annabeth confirmed. "Just keep the lightning subtle. Element of surprise is key." I helped Harry strap on his armor. We'd had to get a custom set made, as even the smallest standard-issue pieces swallowed him whole. He gripped his weapon with practiced ease, a 3-foot celestial bronze trident that could collapse into a ballpoint pen, similar to Riptide. Leo had crafted it for him 2 summers ago, adding modifications that helped Harry channel both his lightning and water abilities. "Remember," I said as Chiron called for teams to assemble, "this is just a game. No need to go full godly wrath on anyone." Harry rolled his eyes. I know. No maiming campers." "That's my boy," I grinned, ruffling his hair again, which he pretended to hate but secretly loved. As we lined up with our blue-plumed teammates, I caught sight of Grover trotting over to the sidelines. He waved enthusiastically, and Harry waved back. Grover had become something of an uncle figure to Harry, teaching him woodland magic on the side and slipping him contraband sodas when I wasn't looking. Chiron cantered to the center of the assembly, raising his hand for silence. "Heroes. You know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. The entire forest is fair game. All magic items are permitted. No maiming or killing is allowed." He gave Harry and me a pointed look at this last part, making several campers snicker. "Guards may not stand within 10 yards of the flag. I will serve as referee and battlefield medic. Arm yourselves." He spread his hands, and the tables laid out with equipment disappeared. I uncapped Riptide, the familiar weight of the sword balanced perfectly in my hand. Beside me, Harry clicked the hidden switch on his trident, extending it to full length. "Blue team," Annabeth called, "forward." We cheered and raced into the forest, splitting into prearranged groups. I led the main assault force toward the creek, making as much noise as possible to draw attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Annabeth and Harry peeling away, moving silent as shadows toward a hidden crossing point downstream. The game started with typical Capture the Flag chaos. The red team met us at the creek, Clarice leading the charge with her electric spear. I engaged her directly, water swirling around my feet to boost my speed and strength. "Where's the brat, Jackson?" she taunted, jabbing at me. "Afraid he'll embarrass himself again?" I grinned, parrying her strike. "Wouldn't you like to know?" The battle spread along the creek, exactly as planned. With most of the red team focused on our frontal assault, Annabeth and Harry would have a clearer path to their flag. I just needed to keep Clarice occupied long enough for them to succeed. "You know," I said conversationally as we traded blows, "for someone who claims to hate Harry, you spend an awful lot of time asking about him." Clarice scowled. "He's a walking powder keg. Powers from 2 of the big 3. It's not natural. Says the daughter of the war god who once tried to dunk my head in a toilet," I retorted, sidestepping her thrust. Our duel intensified, drawing more combatants from both sides. I lost track of time, focused entirely on keeping the red team engaged. Everything was going according to plan. Until it wasn't. The first sign that something had gone wrong was a sudden darkening of the sky. Storm clouds gathered with unnatural speed, swirling directly above the part of the forest where the red team's flag would be hidden. "Oh no," I muttered, recognizing Harry's signature move. A second later, lightning split the sky, followed by what sounded like a small explosion. Clarice and I both froze mid-combat. "What the Hades is that?" she demanded. I didn't wait to explain. Shoving past her, I sprinted upstream toward the disturbance, dread building in my chest. Harry wouldn't use that level of power unless something had gone seriously wrong. As I ran, the storm intensified. Rain began to fall, but it wasn't normal rain. The droplets seemed to hang in the air longer than they should, forming strange patterns before falling. I'd seen Harry accidentally do this before when his powers conflicted, water responding to both his Zeus and Poseidon abilities simultaneously. I burst into a clearing just in time to see a massive wall of electrified water surging toward a group of red team defenders. Annabeth was shouting something, trying to get to Harry, who stood at the center of the chaos, his trident raised and his eyes glowing with an unnatural blue-green light. "Harry!" I yelled, but my voice was lost in the roar of the storm. The water crashed down, sweeping away 3 Ares campers and a Hephaestus kid. They weren't hurt, the water cushioned them even as it carried them off, but their shock was evident. This was way beyond the usual capture the flag shenanigans. I pushed through the deluge, fighting against the current that seemed to recognize me but was too wild to fully yield to my own control. At the center of it all, Harry was trembling with effort, his powers clearly having spiraled beyond his command. "Harry, you need to stop." I reached him, gripping his shoulders. "Let it go." His eyes focused on me, confusion replacing the eerie glow. "Percy. I can't stop it. They're fighting each other again." I could feel it now, the clash of divine energies surging through him. Water and electricity, sea and sky, Poseidon and Zeus, 2 fundamental forces that were never meant to coexist in one vessel. "Yes, you can," I insisted. "Remember what we practiced. Separate them in your mind." He closed his eyes, concentrating. The storm wavered, the lightning flashes becoming less frequent. The suspended raindrops began to fall normally. "That's it," I encouraged. "Lightning goes up, water flows down. Don't try to control both at once." Gradually, the chaos subsided. The unnatural storm dissipated, leaving a group of soaked, bewildered campers in its wake. Harry sagged against me, exhausted. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to, it's okay," I assured him, though I knew it wasn't, not really. This was the 3rd major incident this summer, and each one was stronger than the last. "What happened?" Annabeth sloshed over to us, dripping but apparently unharmed. "We were ambushed," she explained. "The Hecate cabin set a trap, some kind of magic that specifically targeted Harry. When it triggered, his powers went haywire." I frowned. That was concerning. A trap designed specifically for Harry? Why would they? I didn't get to finish because Chiron galloped into the clearing, his expression grim. Behind him came Mr. D, which was unusual, he rarely bothered to attend camp activities. "What happened here?" Chiron demanded, surveying the waterlogged clearing and dazed campers. Before anyone could answer, Mr. D snapped his fingers. Instantly, everyone was dry, the clearing restored to its previous state. His violet eyes fixed on Harry with unusual intensity. "The boy lost control again," he stated flatly. "This is becoming a pattern, Peter Johnson." "It wasn't his fault," I protested. "Someone set a magical trap, which would not have caused this level of reaction in any normal demigod." Mr. D cut me off. "This game is over. Everyone back to camp." Perry Johansson, take young Harold to the big house. Chiron and I need to have a word with him. The campers dispersed, whispering among themselves. Many cast wary glances at Harry, who seemed to shrink under their scrutiny. I kept a protective arm around his shoulders as we followed Chiron and Mr. D back toward the big house. It's not fair, Harry muttered. I was doing fine until that weird purple mist grabbed me. Purple mist? I asked sharply. You didn't mention that before. Harry nodded. When Annabeth and I got close to their flag, this purple smoke came out of nowhere. It wrapped around me, and it felt strange. Like it was pulling at something inside me. That's when I lost control. I exchanged worried glances with Annabeth, who had stuck close despite Mr. D's dismissal. This sounded like more than a simple Hecate cabin prank. At the big house, we found an unexpected scene. Standing on the porch with Chiron was a tall, elderly man with a long silver beard, wearing what looked like a bathrobe made of purple velvet. Half-moon spectacles perched on his crooked nose, and his eyes twinkled with an intelligence that reminded me somewhat of Athena. Ah, the stranger said, his British accent immediately catching my attention. This must be young Harry. Harry stopped dead in his tracks, staring at the old man. Who are you? This, Chiron said formally, is Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He's come a long way to speak with you, Harry. I felt Harry tense beside me. Witchcraft. Like my mom. It was one of the few details we'd learned over the years, that Lily Potter had been a witch, part of a hidden society of magic users that operated parallel to both the mortal and godly worlds. Precisely, Dumbledore smiled kindly. I knew your mother well. And your stepfather, James Potter. They were exceptional students at Hogwarts. Stepfather? Harry looked up at me, confusion written across his face. We'd never heard that detail before. I stepped slightly in front of Harry, protective instincts kicking in. No offense, Mr. Dumbledore, but you can't just show up after 5 years and start dropping information bombs on a 9-year-old. Where have you been all this time? And how did you even find this place? Dumbledore didn't seem bothered by my hostility. Valid questions, Mr. Jackson. Perhaps we should continue this conversation inside. There is much to discuss, and not all of it should be overheard by curious campers. He gestured toward the clusters of demigods who were pretending not to eavesdrop from various vantage points around the green. Percy's right, Harry said firmly, gaining confidence. If you knew my mom, why did you leave me with the Dursleys? They locked me in a cupboard. A flash of something, regret. Pain, crossed Dumbledore's face. That is one of many matters I hope to explain, Harry. I have made mistakes where you are concerned, grave ones. But there were reasons for the choices I made, even if they proved flawed in execution. That's not good enough, I began, but Chiron held up a hand. Percy, please. Professor Dumbledore has traveled far, and his information may be crucial to understanding Harry's unique situation. Let us at least hear him out. I wanted to argue, but the earnest look in Harry's eyes stopped me. He'd spent years wondering about his past, piecing together fragments from dreams and the occasional cryptic message from Zeus. If this old wizard had answers, Harry deserved to hear them. Fine, I conceded. But I'm staying with him. I would expect nothing less, Dumbledore nodded. Your loyalty to Harry does you credit, Mr. Jackson. Inside, we gathered around a ping-pong table that served as our council meeting spot. Mr. D conjured himself a Diet Coke before slouching into a chair. Well, Bumblebore, get on with it, he drawled. Some of us have important god business to attend to. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with amusement. It's been some time, Dionysus. Still enjoying your sabbatical at this charming camp? Mr. D scowled. 100 years of dealing with brats. Father's punishment lacks imagination. On the contrary, Dumbledore replied mildly. I've always found young people to be the most illuminating company. Their perspectives are refreshingly unclouded by the cynicism that afflicts so many of us in our later years. I decided I might like this wizard after all. Perhaps we should begin with the most pressing matter, Chiron suggested, settling into his magical wheelchair to fit at the table. Harry's increasingly volatile powers. Ah, yes. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. What happened today is precisely why I've come. Harry's dual nature, demigod and wizard, is extraordinarily rare. In fact, I know of only 2 previous cases in all of magical history, and neither had powers of Harry's magnitude. Wait, Harry interrupted. There were others like me. Other, wizard demigods? Indeed, Dumbledore nodded. Though their circumstances were somewhat different. You see, when a god has a child with a mortal who carries magical blood, the results are unpredictable. Sometimes the child is simply a demigod with a touch more affinity for certain kinds of magic. Sometimes they're primarily wizards with a heightened connection to their godly ancestors' domain. And Harry? I asked. Harry is something else entirely. Dumbledore's expression grew serious. He is fully both, a powerful wizard and a true demigod. This is partly due to Zeus's divine nature, partly due to Lily's exceptional magical talent, and partly due to other factors. Like Poseidon's blessing, I guessed. Dumbledore glanced at Mr. D, who shrugged as if to say, your funeral if you reveal too much. Yes, the wizard confirmed. Though blessing might be an oversimplification. What Lord Poseidon did was unprecedented, a partial sharing of divine essence with a child not his own. But why? Harry asked, the question we'd all wondered for years. Why would Poseidon do that for me? A heavy silence fell. Dumbledore seemed to be weighing his words carefully. There is a prophecy, he finally said. 2, actually, one from the Oracle of Delphi, and one from the magical world. Both concern you, Harry. I groaned. Not another great prophecy. The last one nearly got me killed about 50 times. These are different, Chiron said carefully. More specific, and more immediate. The first comes from your oracle, Dumbledore continued. Child of lightning born to magic's flower, shall reach the crossroads at his 9th hour. Sea and sky within one soul, only balanced can be made whole. Should powers divide, the darkness thrives, should powers unite, the darkness dies. That's why Percy rescued me when I was 4, Harry realized, eyes widening. So I'd reach my 9th year at Camp Half-Blood, learning to control my powers. In part, Chiron confirmed. Though Percy acted on his own initiative, the timing proved fortunate. We've been working toward this moment, helping you develop both aspects of your power in preparation. Preparation for what? I demanded, not liking where this was heading. For Harry's entry into the wizarding world, Dumbledore replied. Which, traditionally, begins at age 11 with attendance at a magical school. However, Harry's case is unique. The second prophecy suggests he must begin bridging both worlds earlier, hence my visit today. Harry leaned forward eagerly. What's the second prophecy? The wizard one. Dumbledore's expression darkened. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other for neither can live while the other survives. A chill ran through the room. Even Mr. D looked disturbed. The Dark Lord? I asked. You mean like, Kronos or something? No, Dumbledore shook his head. A dark wizard named Lord Voldemort. He terrorized the magical community years ago, seeking power and immortality. He murdered many, including James Potter, the man who raised Harry as his son after marrying Lily, knowing she carried Zeus's child. Harry's hand went to his lightning scar. He gave me this, didn't he? Voldemort. Dumbledore nodded gravely. He tried to kill you, Harry. After murdering your mother and stepfather, he cast the killing curse at you, a spell from which no one had ever survived. But it rebounded, apparently destroying him while leaving only that scar on you. Apparently destroying? I caught the careful phrasing. You don't think he's gone for good? I know he is not, Dumbledore said simply. There have been signs of his attempt to return. That is why Harry's training must expand to include his magical abilities. The power the Dark Lord knows not may well be Harry's unique combination of godly and magical talents. Harry was quiet, processing all this. Finally, he asked, "Is that why I've been having those dreams? About a pale man with red eyes?" Dumbledore and Chiron exchanged alarmed glances. "You've been dreaming of Voldemort?" Dumbledore asked sharply. "For how long?" "A few months," Harry admitted. "I didn't say anything because, well, demigods have weird dreams all the time, right Percy?" I nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, but you should have told me anyway, buddy." "These dreams may be significant," Dumbledore said. "The connection between you and Voldemort is complex, Harry. When he failed to kill you, something unusual occurred, a connection was formed. Which is exactly why the boy needs better control," Mr. D interjected. "His godly powers are leaking into his wizard abilities and vice versa. That display in the forest. That was magical energy amplifying his godly powers. If he can't learn to separate and control both sides of his nature, he'll be a danger to himself and everyone around him." "For once, I agree with Dionysus," Dumbledore said. "Which brings me to my proposal. Harry should begin magical training immediately, alongside his continued demigod education." "How?" I asked skeptically. "We can't exactly enroll him at Hogwarts 2 years early." "No," Dumbledore agreed. "But I can arrange for qualified instructors to visit camp regularly. Additionally, I suggest Harry spend part of each year in the magical world, becoming familiar with its customs and developing the connections he will need." I didn't like it. After 5 years of keeping Harry safe at camp, the idea of him venturing into an entirely different world with its own set of dangers made me uneasy. "And what about this Voldemort guy?" I pressed. "If he's trying to come back, wouldn't Harry be safer staying here, behind our magical barriers?" "If only it were so simple," Dumbledore sighed. "Voldemort will pursue Harry regardless, Mr. Jackson. Better he face that reality prepared than be sheltered until catastrophe forces the issue. Additionally, the prophecy suggests Harry needs both sides of his power in balance to succeed." Harry, who had been quiet throughout this exchange, suddenly spoke up. "I want to do it." We all turned to look at him. "I want to learn about being a wizard," he continued, his young face set with determination that made him look older than his 9 years. "I want to know about my mom, and James Potter, and this whole other part of me. And..." His voice grew quieter. "I want to understand why this Voldemort guy wanted to kill me as a baby. Why my mom had to die." I saw the resolve in his eyes and recognized it all too well. It was the same determination I'd felt when learning about my own complicated heritage. As much as I wanted to protect him, I knew Harry needed this. "If Harry wants to learn," I said carefully, "then I support him. But I have conditions." "Name them," Dumbledore replied. "First, his primary home stays Camp Half-Blood. Second, I want to be involved, I go where he goes, at least until I'm satisfied it's safe. Third, complete transparency from now on. No more hidden prophecies or cryptic half-truths." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "The first 2 conditions are reasonable, though your presence in certain magical locations may require special arrangements. As for complete transparency..." He smiled slightly. "I shall endeavor to be as forthcoming as prudence allows." "That's not a yes," I pointed out. "It's the best you'll get from him," Mr. D snorted. "Wizards love their secrets almost as much as gods do." Chiron cleared his throat. "Perhaps a compromise?" Professor Dumbledore shares all information directly relevant to Harry's safety and training, while maintaining discretion on wider magical matters until Harry is older. That seems fair, Dumbledore agreed. I looked at Harry, who nodded eagerly. Fine, I sighed. When do we start? There's no time like, Dumbledore began, but was interrupted by a sudden commotion outside. Annabeth burst through the door, her dagger drawn. We're under attack. The camp borders have been breached. We all leaped to our feet. What? Chiron exclaimed. That's impossible. The magical boundaries, something's disrupting them, Annabeth reported breathlessly. Creatures are getting through, some look like regular monsters, but others, they're like nothing I've ever seen. And there are people with them, wearing black robes and masks. Dumbledore's face went grave. Death Eaters. Voldemort's followers. But how could they find this place? A horrible thought occurred to me. The trap in the forest during the game. The purple mist that affected Harry, what if it wasn't just meant to trigger his powers? What if it was scanning them, analyzing them to find a way through our defenses? A magical beacon, Dumbledore muttered. Using Harry's own unique energy signature to locate him and create a temporary pathway through your camp's protections. Ingenious and disturbing. Theorize later, Mr. D snapped, rising with unexpected speed. Defend now. The brats are my responsibility, however irritating they may be. We rushed outside to find chaos. Campers were scrambling to arms, forming defensive lines as Clarice shouted orders. Bizarre creatures prowled the edges of the camp, some familiar monsters like hellhounds and Dracini, but others I'd never seen before, hooded floating things that seemed to radiate cold, giant spiders moving with unnatural intelligence, and what looked like animated corpses shambling forward. Among them were the black-robed figures Annabeth had mentioned, about a dozen of them, wielding wands and sending jets of colored light at our defenses. Where their spells hit the magical border, it rippled and weakened. Inferi, Dementors, and Acromantula, Dumbledore identified grimly. Working alongside Greek monsters and Death Eaters. This alliance is most troubling. Harry, stay with Chiron, I ordered, uncapping Riptide. No way. Harry protested. I can fight too. Percy's right, Harry, Dumbledore said, drawing his own wand. You are their target. Best not to give them what they seek. Before Harry could argue further, 3 hellhounds leaped through a wavering section of the barrier, charging straight for us. I met the first one with Riptide, slicing it to dust mid-jump. Annabeth took the second, while Dumbledore flicked his wand almost casually at the third. A jet of blue light hit it, and the hellhound froze solid before shattering into icy monster dust. Whoa, I couldn't help saying. Neat trick. A simple freezing charm, amplified, Dumbledore explained modestly. Though against these particular creatures, your celestial bronze is more efficient. More monsters and wizards were breaking through now. Mr. D had transformed into his full godly form, purple fire blazing around him as vines erupted from the ground to entangle attackers. Chiron was firing arrows with impossible speed and accuracy, while Harry, ignoring our directive to stay back, had extended his trident and was summoning small lightning bolts to zap approaching enemies. We need to close the breach. Annabeth shouted, pointing to where the magical border was weakest. A particularly large Death Eater was maintaining some kind of dark spell, widening the gap with each pulse of energy. On it. I started toward the breach, but one of the hooded floating creatures, a Dementor, Dumbledore had called it, drifted into my path. Instantly, I was plunged into a cold so intense it burned. Worst of all, hopelessness washed over me in waves. I saw visions of Tartarus, of losing Annabeth, of Harry dead because I failed to protect him. Percy. Harry's voice seemed to come from miles away. Percy, get up. I hadn't even realized I'd fallen to my knees. The Dementor loomed closer, a rotting hand extending from its robe. Somewhere behind me, I heard Dumbledore shout something about a Patronus, but he was occupied fending off 3 Death Eaters at once. With tremendous effort, I raised Riptide, but the sword felt impossibly heavy. The Dementor wasn't deterred by celestial bronze anyway. It bent closer, and I smelled decay as it drew a rattling breath. Then a small figure darted between us. Harry, his face pale but determined, raised his trident. Instead of lightning, though, something new happened. A silvery blue mist formed around the trident's points, coalescing into the shape of a dolphin that swam through the air toward the Dementor. The creature recoiled as if struck, retreating from the glowing animal. Harry looked as surprised as I felt, but he maintained his concentration, the dolphin growing brighter as his confidence increased. "Harry," Dumbledore called, dispatching his last Death Eater with a flick of his wand, "how did you?" He didn't finish the question because at that moment, the main breach in our defenses widened dramatically. The large Death Eater had been joined by 2 more, their combined spells creating an opening big enough for a giant to walk through. "They're coming for Harry," Annabeth shouted, fighting her way toward us. "We need to get him out of here." As if confirming her words, the Death Eaters all turned toward Harry, their wand movements becoming more focused. "Get the boy," one of them shouted in a harsh female voice. "The Dark Lord wants him alive." Harry stood his ground, the silvery dolphin fading as he shifted his power back to what he knew best. Lightning arced from his trident, striking one of the Death Eaters and sending them flying backward. With his other hand, he pulled water from a nearby fountain, forming a protective barrier around us. "Percy," he gasped, the effort of controlling both powers simultaneously clearly straining him, "I can't hold this for long." "You don't have to," I assured him, finding new strength now that the Dementor was gone. "Just long enough for me to close that breach." I concentrated on the creek that ran through camp, calling to the water with every ounce of my power. It responded instantly, a massive wave rising up and surging toward the boundary. At the same time, Harry let out a yell, directing a powerful bolt of lightning at the exact spot where the Death Eaters were maintaining their spell. The combination was devastating. Water and electricity collided with the dark magic, creating an explosive reaction that threw everyone nearby off their feet. When the dust settled, the breach was sealed, the magical border shimmering back to full strength. The monsters and wizards who had already made it inside were now cut off from retreat. Clarice and her siblings took advantage of their confusion, launching a coordinated attack that dispatched most of the remaining threats. Dumbledore dealt with the last few Death Eaters, binding them with magical ropes that glowed blue in the fading light. "Is everyone okay?" I called, helping Harry to his feet. He was wobbling with exhaustion but managed a tired grin. "That was amazing," he exclaimed. "Did you see what we did? Our powers worked together." I realized he was right. Instead of fighting each other, our water and lightning had combined perfectly, just like the prophecy mentioned. "Sea and sky within one soul," I quoted quietly. "Only balanced can be made whole." "Indeed," Dumbledore said, approaching with Chiron. "Most impressive, Harry. And that Patronus charm, a remarkably advanced piece of magic for one who has had no formal magical training." "Patronus?" Harry looked confused. "You mean the dolphin thing?" "I don't know how I did that. I just wanted to save Percy, and it happened." "The Patronus is one of the most powerful defensive spells in wizardry," Dumbledore explained. "It requires both technical skill and emotional power, specifically, the ability to focus on a genuinely happy memory even in the face of a Dementor's despair. That you produced one instinctively, without training." His eyes twinkled. "Well, it suggests your magical aptitude is every bit as strong as your demigod abilities." "But what were those Death Eater guys after?" I asked, keeping a protective arm around Harry's shoulders. "Why attack now?" Dumbledore's expression grew serious as he examined one of the bound wizards. "I believe they were sent to capture Harry, not kill him. Which confirms my fears about Voldemort's plans for return." "Return?" Clarice had joined us, her spear still crackling with electricity. You mean there's another big bad out there besides the usual monsters? Great, just what we needed. This attack changes things, Chiron said gravely. The coordination between Greek monsters and wizarding forces suggests an alliance that threatens both our worlds. Dumbledore nodded. I agree. Harry's training must begin immediately, more urgently than I anticipated. And perhaps. He glanced at me. Perhaps Mr. Jackson's involvement should be more extensive than I initially proposed. The bond between you two clearly strengthens Harry's control over his dual nature. I straightened, feeling the weight of responsibility settling more firmly on my shoulders. Whatever Harry needs. I'm not letting him face this alone. We'll start tomorrow, Dumbledore decided. I've taken the liberty of arranging for your first magical instructor to arrive in the morning. An old friend who is particularly well suited to helping with Harry's unique circumstances. Harry looked simultaneously exhausted and excited. Who is it? Remus Lupin, Dumbledore smiled. He was a close friend of your mother and James. And he has some experience with balancing different aspects of one's nature. As if to punctuate the moment, a roll of thunder sounded overhead, followed by a subtle tremor in the ground, Zeus and Poseidon acknowledging the decision in their own way. Later that night, after the excitement had died down and the captive Death Eaters had been turned over to Dumbledore's wizard allies for imprisonment, Harry and I sat on the dock at the canoe lake. His legs dangled over the edge, occasionally getting splashed by friendly water nymphs who had taken a special liking to the boy who shared power with both the sea and sky gods. Percy. Harry said softly. Do you think I'll be good at wizard stuff? I ruffled his hair, a gesture that had become our ritual over the years. Are you kidding? You did that Patronus thing on your first try. Dumbledore looked like his eyebrows were going to fly off his face, he was so impressed. Harry smiled, but it faded quickly. But what about the prophecies? Either must die at the hand of the other. That means I have to kill this Voldemort guy, or he kills me. My heart clenched. It wasn't fair that a 9-year-old had to wrestle with such dark thoughts. But then, when had being a demigod ever been fair? Listen to me, I said firmly. Prophecies are tricky. Trust me, I've dealt with my share. They never mean exactly what you think they mean. And whatever happens, you won't face it alone. You've got me, and Annabeth, and Grover, and Chiron, and now Dumbledore and this Lupin guy. Plus 2 pretty powerful gods who seem invested in keeping you alive. Because of the prophecy, Harry said shrewdly. I shook my head. Maybe that's how it started. But Zeus claimed you as his son in front of the whole camp. And Poseidon, well, he's never admitted it to me directly, but I think he's got a soft spot for you. Gods don't share their divine essence lightly. Harry leaned against my side, a gesture of trust that still humbled me every time. I'm glad you found me, Percy. Even if it means dealing with prophecies and Death Eaters and stuff. Me too, Lightning Boy, I said, wrapping an arm around his thin shoulders. Me too. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars reflect on the lake's surface. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, wizard training, magical threats, and the continuing struggle to balance the opposing forces within Harry. But for tonight, he was just a kid sitting with his big brother, safe and sound at the only real home either of us had ever known. As if reading my thoughts, Harry yawned and said, Can I sleep in your cabin tonight? I don't want to be alone. Course you can, I assured him. Brothers stick together, remember? He nodded sleepily, already half dozing against my shoulder. With a smile, I scooped him up, no longer the featherweight 4-year-old I'd rescued, but still small for his age, and carried him back toward cabin 3, our footprints in the sand washing away with the gentle lap of waves against the shore. Behind us, in the darkened forest, a silver owl watched our retreat before taking flight, vanishing into the night sky with a message for Olympus. The child of prophecy was ready to take his next step. Chapter 3, Worlds Collide. You've got everything. Robes? Wand? That weird potion stuff Lupin made you pack. Yes, Percy, Harry sighed, checking his trunk for the 5th time that morning. I've been packing for Hogwarts all week. I think I'd notice if something was missing. 3 years had passed since the Death Eater attack on Camp Half-Blood, and apparently 12-year-olds had way more attitude than 9-year-olds. The scrawny kid I'd rescued from a cupboard had grown into a confident young demigod wizard hybrid who could summon lightning, control water, and turn a teacup into a tortoise. Don't ask me how that last one was useful in battle, but Remus insisted it showed excellent transfiguration aptitude. Just checking, I said, ruffling his perpetually messy hair. He ducked away, but I caught the smile he tried to hide. Some things never changed. Today's a big deal, you know. You don't have to remind me, Harry replied, pushing his glasses up his nose. They were new, sleek rectangular frames that Annabeth had helped him pick out last month, finally replacing the round taped-together ones he'd arrived with 8 years ago. First wizard shopping trip. Then in September, first wizard school. His excited expression faltered slightly. First time we'll be apart for more than a few days since. Since I busted you out of Privet Drive, I finished, giving his shoulder a squeeze. I know, buddy. It's weird for me too. That was the understatement of the century. After 8 years as Harry's self-appointed big brother, the idea of sending him off to a magical castle in Scotland made my stomach twist into knots that would have impressed the Hephaestus kids. But this was necessary, both prophecies made that clear. Harry needed to develop both sides of his heritage to face whatever was coming. You ready to go? I asked, checking my watch. Lupin's meeting us at the Leaky Cauldron at noon, London time. Harry nodded, dragging his trunk toward the door of cabin 3. I still couldn't get used to seeing him in regular clothes instead of the Camp Half-Blood t-shirt he practically lived in. Today he wore jeans and a blue button-down that made his eyes look even greener than usual, the special green that wasn't quite mine or our father's, but had that electric Zeus quality to it. Hey, I said as we stepped outside into the August sunshine, remember the rules, okay? Harry rolled his eyes but recited dutifully, no using demigod powers in front of wizards unless it's life or death. No talking about Camp Half-Blood to anyone except trusted adults. No challenging British monsters just to see if they're different from American ones. And most importantly, call you through the enchanted mirror every day, or you'll convince Blackjack to fly across the Atlantic and check on me. Damn straight, I nodded. That Pegasus would do it too. He still thinks you're some kind of horse whisperer after you saved his wing last summer. We made our way toward Talia's Pine, where Argus was waiting with the camp van to drive us into Manhattan. From there, we'd use the special port key Dumbledore had arranged, some old boot that would magically transport us to London. 3 years of exposure to the wizarding world had almost made such things seem normal. Almost. Chiron met us at the top of Half-Blood Hill, his tail swishing thoughtfully as he gazed down at Harry. So, he said, the young hero embarks on a new quest. Harry smiled up at him. I'm just going shopping, Chiron. The quest doesn't start until September. Every journey begins with a single step, Chiron replied sagely. And this particular journey has been in motion since before your birth, young Harry. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Chiron had gotten increasingly mystical in his pronouncements about Harry over the years, especially after the attack 3 years ago proved both prophecies were accelerating. We'll be careful, I promised. In and out, just like we planned. Basic school supplies, nothing fancy. Actually, Harry interjected, Professor Dumbledore said first years are allowed to bring a pet. I was hoping maybe an owl. For sending letters and stuff. I sighed. Fine. 1 owl. But nothing with more than the usual number of eyes, teeth, or magical abilities, got it? I still haven't recovered from that 3-headed puffskein Hagrid tried to give you for your birthday. Harry grinned. Deal. Chiron placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. You've trained well these past 8 years, Harry Potter. Remember all you've learned here when you enter the wizarding world. The disciplines of combat and magic are not so different at their core, both require focus, precision, and respect for their power. I will, Harry promised, his expression turning serious. And I'll keep practicing with my trident. Percy's been helping me design exercises I can do in private. Good, Chiron nodded. Your unique abilities are your greatest strength, but they must remain your secret advantage for now. There are those in the wizarding world who would not understand, or worse, would seek to exploit them. With final goodbyes to Chiron and a few early rising campers, we loaded into the van and set off. Harry was uncharacteristically quiet on the drive, staring out the window at the passing landscape. Nervous? I asked. He shrugged. A bit. Remus has taught me loads about the wizarding world, but it's different actually going there, you know. What if I do something wrong and everyone realizes I don't belong? Hey, I turned to face him. You belong in both worlds, Harry. That's what makes you special. And trust me, I've seen you accidentally create a mini hurricane during Capture the Flag. Compared to that, wizard shopping should be a breeze. That got a laugh out of him. Fair point. And at least you'll be with me today. Wouldn't miss it for the world, I assured him. Though I can't promise not to embarrass you by asking stupid questions about wizard stuff. Your questions aren't stupid, Harry said loyally. Just because you asked Remus if wizard photos were actually tiny people trapped in paper, it was a legitimate concern. I protested. After what happened with those moving knight statues at that ministry place. We bantered all the way to Manhattan, the familiar rhythm of our jokes easing Harry's tension. By the time we reached the empty alley where we were supposed to activate the port key, he was bouncing with excitement rather than nerves. Okay, I said, pulling the beat-up work boot from my backpack. Dumbledore said we both need to be touching it when I say the activation phrase. I checked my watch. In about 30 seconds. Harry placed his hand on the boot, and I did the same, bracing myself for the unpleasant sensation I remembered from previous portkey trips. Here we go, I muttered as the countdown hit 0. Lemon drops. The world dissolved into a chaotic whirl of color and sound. I felt like I was being yanked forward by my navel, spinning through space at impossible speed. Just when I thought I might be sick, we crashed to a stop in what appeared to be a small, dimly lit storeroom filled with cleaning supplies. Smooth landing, Harry commented, somehow still on his feet while I picked myself up from where I'd sprawled inelegantly across a mop bucket. Show off, I grumbled. You just have an unfair advantage with the whole Zeus air travel thing. Maybe, he grinned, offering me a hand up. Or maybe I'm just more graceful than you. Yeah. Let's find Lupin before your head gets too big to fit through the door. We emerged from the storeroom into the main area of the Leaky Cauldron, a dark, shabby pub that served as the entrance to Wizarding London. Despite having visited a few times over the years for Harry's preliminary magical education, the place still gave me a slight chill. It wasn't just the weird clientele, some of whom definitely weren't fully human, it was the feeling of being in a completely different world that operated by rules I didn't fully understand. Percy. Harry. A familiar voice called from a corner booth. Remus Lupin stood to greet us, his prematurely lined face breaking into a warm smile. Despite being only in his early 30s, Remus looked much older, with streaks of gray in his light brown hair and permanent shadows under his eyes, side effects of his furry little problem, as he jokingly called his lycanthropy. Right on time, he said, clasping Harry's shoulder affectionately. Excited for your first proper wizarding shopping trip? Definitely, Harry nodded eagerly. I've been saving my allowance all year for extra books. I snorted. Look what you've done to him, Remus. Kid used to think books were just for building forts. The influence of a good education, Remus replied with a wink. Though I suspect Annabeth might have had something to do with it as well. She gave me a whole reading list, Harry admitted. Stuff about wizard history that isn't in the Hogwarts curriculum. That's my boy, I said proudly. Always be prepared for the quest, right? Remus led us through the back of the pub to a small, walled courtyard. Drawing his wand, he tapped a specific brick, and the wall began to rearrange itself, bricks sliding apart to form an archway revealing a bustling, winding street beyond. "Welcome," Remus announced, "to Diagon Alley." Harry's eyes widened. Despite Remus's lessons and magical textbooks, nothing had prepared either of us for the sensory overload of the real thing. The street twisted and turned out of sight, packed with shops selling everything from cauldrons to broomsticks. Witches and wizards in colorful robes hurried past, some carrying strange parcels or exotic pets. The buzz of conversation mingled with hooting owls and the occasional magical pop or bang from nearby stores. "Whoa," Harry breathed. "It's amazing." "It certainly is," Remus agreed, looking fondly at Harry's awestruck expression. "Now, we have a few essentials to gather. Hogwarts supplies, your wand, and then a trip to Gringotts." "Gringotts?" I asked. "The Wizard Bank," Remus explained. "Run by goblins. Quite formidable creatures, actually. We need to access Harry's vault." "I have a vault?" Harry asked, surprised. Remus nodded. "James and Lily left you well provided for. And I believe Zeus may have made certain contributions over the years." That was news to me. Though I supposed it made sense, Zeus wasn't known for being particularly hands-on as a father, but he did occasionally acknowledge Harry with dramatic lightning displays or mysterious gifts appearing at camp. "First stop, Madame Malkin's for your school robes," Remus decided, guiding us down the street. The robe shop was small and cluttered, with racks of black fabric and a short, smiling witch who immediately ushered Harry onto a footstool for measuring. I hung back with Remus, watching as magical measuring tapes flew around Harry of their own accord. "How's he really doing?" Remus asked quietly. "With the preparations, I mean." "Good," I replied. "His control over both power sets has improved a lot. He can maintain the balance for longer periods now before the energy starts fighting itself." "And the dreams?" I hesitated. "Still happening. Not as frequently, but more intense when they do come. Last week he woke up the entire Poseidon cabin with a thunderclap because he dreamed about Voldemort again." Remus's expression darkened. "Dumbledore fears the connection is strengthening. That's partly why it's so important for Harry to begin formal magical training now. He needs to learn to protect his mind." "Can he do that? Learn to block the dreams?" "There are methods," Remus said carefully. "Occlumency, primarily, the magical defense of the mind against external penetration. It's advanced magic, but given Harry's aptitude." He shrugged. "If anyone can master it early, it would be Lily's son." After the robe fitting, we moved on to the apothecary for potion supplies, which smelled worse than the Ares cabin after a week-long Capture the Flag tournament, then to a bookstore called Flourish and Blots where Harry loaded up on textbooks plus several extras that weren't on his school list. "Seriously?" I teased as he added practical defensive magic and its use against the dark arts to his already teetering stack. "You're turning into such a bookworm." "Knowledge is power," he quoted primly, in a perfect imitation of Annabeth that made me laugh. "Besides," he added more seriously, "I need to catch up. Most wizard kids grow up knowing all this stuff. I'm starting from behind." "Trust me, Harry," Remus interjected, "from what I've seen of your abilities, you're hardly starting from behind. Different, yes, but certainly not disadvantaged." Our next stop was Ollivander's, a narrow shop with a simple sign reading, "Makers of fine wand since 382 BC. "This is it," Remus said, his voice taking on a reverent quality. "Perhaps the most important purchase you'll make today. A wizard's wand is an extension of their magical self." I hung back as they entered, feeling suddenly like an intruder on a purely wizarding moment. But Harry paused in the doorway, looking back at me. "Aren't you coming?" he asked, his expression so vulnerable it took me right back to that night in Surrey when he'd asked if I was real. Of course, I said, stepping forward. Wouldn't miss it. The shop was tiny, stacked floor to ceiling with thousands of narrow boxes. The air felt charged with a strange energy that made the hairs on my arms stand up, not unlike being in Zeus's throne room during a council meeting, but more concentrated. "Good afternoon," said a soft voice, making all three of us jump. An old man with wide, pale eyes that shone like moons appeared from between the shelves. "Mr. Ollivander," Remus greeted him. "We're here for Harry's first wand." Those silvery eyes fixed on Harry with unsettling intensity. "Ah, yes. Harry Potter. I've been expecting you." His gaze flickered briefly to me, a flash of confusion crossing his features before returning to Harry. "You have your mother's eyes." She favored a willow wand, 10¼ inches, swishy. "Excellent for charm work." Harry straightened slightly. "You remember my mother's wand?" "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter," Ollivander replied. "Every single one." He moved closer, examining Harry with such focus it was almost uncomfortable to watch. "And that's where." One long, white finger reached toward Harry's forehead, nearly touching the lightning bolt scar. "I'm sorry to say I sold the wand that did it," Ollivander said softly. 13½ inches. You. Powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands. Well, if I'd known what that wand was going out into the world to do. The temperature in the shop seemed to drop. I shifted closer to Harry, protective instincts kicking in, but Remus caught my eye with a slight shake of his head. This was apparently a normal part of the wand shopping experience. "Well, now, Mr. Potter. Let me see." Ollivander pulled a long tape measure from his pocket. "Which is your wand arm?" "I'm right-handed," Harry said. "But I can use both pretty well." "Interesting," Ollivander murmured. "Most unusual. Hold out your arms, please." What followed was the strangest shopping experience I'd ever witnessed. The tape measure flew around Harry of its own accord, measuring seemingly random distances while Ollivander pulled boxes from the shelves, muttering to himself. Then came the testing, wand after wand placed in Harry's hand, only to be snatched away almost immediately when nothing happened, or when something happened too dramatically, like the vase that exploded or the drawer that burst open, showering us with receipts. "Tricky customer, eh?" Ollivander seemed delighted rather than frustrated. "Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere." "I wonder, now, yes, why not, unusual combination, holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple." Harry took the wand, and I immediately felt a change in the air, like the moment before a massive storm breaks. He raised the wand above his head and brought it swishing down, producing a stream of red and gold sparks that lit up the dusty shop like fireworks. I caught a flicker of blue electricity dancing momentarily between the sparks, a touch of his Zeus heritage bleeding through, but if Ollivander noticed, he didn't comment. "Oh, bravo!" Ollivander cried. "Yes, indeed, oh, very good." Well, how curious, how very curious." "Sorry," Harry said, "but what's curious?" Ollivander fixed Harry with his pale stare. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single one. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar." I felt a chill run down my spine. Harry froze, his excitement fading. "Yes, 13½ inches. You. Curious indeed how these things happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great." "Okay, that's enough cryptic wand talk," I interrupted, stepping forward. "How much do we owe you?" Ollivander blinked, as if just remembering I was there. 7 galleons for the wand." Remus quickly paid, and we exited the shop into the bright sunlight of Diagon Alley, which felt especially welcome after the eerie atmosphere of Ollivanders. "That was intense," Harry commented, studying his new wand with a mixture of fascination and unease. "Do you think it matters? That my wand is connected to Voldemort's?" "I think," Remus said carefully, "that magic works in ways even wizards don't fully understand. Connections like these are significant, but they don't determine destiny. What matters is how you use your power, Harry, not where it comes from." I squeezed Harry's shoulder. "He's right. And hey, look at your demigod side, you've got powers from two gods who can barely stand each other, but you make it work. This is just one more thing that makes you uniquely you." Harry nodded, tucking the wand carefully into his pocket. "Thanks. So, where next?" "Gringotts," Remus decided. "Then perhaps Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor to celebrate a successful shopping trip." The Wizarding Bank was impossible to miss, a snowy white building that towered over the neighboring shops, with burnished bronze doors guarded by creatures I assumed were goblins. They were shorter than humans but had sharp, clever faces and long fingers that seemed constantly in motion, counting or gesturing. "Whoa," I muttered as we climbed the white stone steps. "Reminds me of Hephaestus kids, but less, you know, on fire." Remus chuckled. "Goblins are master craftsmen and notoriously shrewd businessmen. Best to be polite and direct with them." The interior of Gringotts was even more impressive, a vast marble hall with hundreds of goblins seated on high stools behind a long counter, weighing coins, examining jewels, and recording figures in large ledgers. Remus led us to an available teller, presenting a small golden key. "Mr. Harry Potter wishes to make a withdrawal," he stated formally. The goblin examined the key closely. "That seems to be in order. I will have someone take you down to the vault." He paused, eyeing me suspiciously. "And this is?" "Percy Jackson," I supplied. "Harry's, guardian." The goblin's eyes narrowed. "You smell of the sea, Percy Jackson. And of something older than wizard magic." I tensed, hand instinctively moving toward Riptide in my pocket. How much could goblins sense about demigods? "He's with me," Harry said firmly, stepping slightly in front of me in a protective gesture that would have been funny if the situation wasn't so tense. "If that's a problem, we can take our business elsewhere." The goblin's fierce expression shifted into something almost like respect. "No problem at all, young Mr. Potter. Griphook will take you to your vault." Another goblin approached and led us through a side door into a narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. A small cart waited on rails that stretched into darkness. We climbed aboard, and immediately the cart took off at breakneck speed, hurtling through a maze of twisting passages. "This is awesome!" Harry shouted over the rushing air, his face lit with excitement. I was less enthusiastic, my demigod battle reflexes screaming at the lack of control. Being underground didn't help either, definitely not my natural element. But Harry was loving it, so I gritted my teeth and held on. The cart finally stopped beside a small door in the passage wall. Griphook unlocked it with Harry's key, and green smoke billowed out. When it cleared, we could see mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, and heaps of little bronze ones. "Whoa," Harry breathed. "Is this all mine?" "The Potter family vault, yes," Griphook confirmed. "With certain additions." In the corner, somewhat separated from the wizard currency, sat a collection of items that clearly hadn't come from Harry's parents, a small chest made of some iridescent material that seemed to shimmer with electrical energy, a delicate silver chain with a trident pendant, and what appeared to be ancient Greek armor sized for a young teenager. "Gifts from Olympus," Remus murmured. "Zeus has acknowledged you in his own way, it seems." Harry approached the chest carefully. When his fingers touched it, blue sparks danced briefly over the surface before the lid opened, revealing a wand holster made of a silvery material I'd never seen before. "Enchanted cloud silver," Griphook explained with obvious reverence. "Forged by Cyclopes in Lord Zeus's workshops." Said to enhance magical conductivity and protect against most forms of magical detection. So I could wear this and use my wand without the ministry picking it up? Harry asked shrewdly. I wouldn't recommend testing that theory, Remus interjected hastily. The ministry's trace is quite thorough, and underage magic outside of school is strictly forbidden. Harry grinned. Just asking hypothetically. After gathering a pouch of wizard money and the gifts from Zeus, the armor wouldn't fit him yet, but Remus shrunk it for transport. We returned to the surface. The remainder of our shopping went smoothly: parchment, quills, a cauldron, and finally, a stop at the magical menagerie for Harry's promised pet. An owl would be most practical, Remus advised as we browsed the noisy shop. They deliver mail and make loyal companions. Harry wandered among the cages, pausing occasionally to examine a particularly interesting specimen. He was about to select a handsome tawny owl when a commotion erupted from the back of the store. No, absolutely not. Back in your cage this instant, the shopkeeper was shouting. We turned to see a magnificent snowy white owl causing chaos, swooping around the shop and apparently stealing treats from various enclosures. I'm terribly sorry, the harried witch told us. That one's been nothing but trouble since she arrived. Incredibly intelligent but absolutely refuses to behave. The owl made another circuit of the shop before landing gracefully on Harry's outstretched arm, fixing him with bright amber eyes that seemed almost challenging. I like her, Harry decided immediately. She reminds me of someone. He shot me a mischievous look. Very funny, I muttered. Just what we need, an owl with attitude problems. But the connection between Harry and the owl was immediate and obvious. She nipped affectionately at his fingers while the shopkeeper watched in amazement. Well, I never, she said. That's the first time she's come to anyone voluntarily. She's yours if you want her, young man, and good riddance. Her name is Hedwig, Harry announced confidently, stroking the owl's snowy feathers. How do you know? I asked. Harry shrugged. She just feels like a Hedwig. With our shopping complete, we stopped for the promised ice cream at Florian Fortescue's. Harry and Hedwig attracted quite a bit of attention, partly because having an owl perched on your shoulder while eating a sundae wasn't typical even by wizard standards, but mostly because people kept doing double takes when they spotted Harry's forehead. I forgot how famous you are here, I commented after the third person nudged their companion and pointed at Harry. The boy who lived, Harry said, rolling his eyes. Still weird to think about. I'm famous for not dying. You're much more than that, Remus said firmly. Though I should warn you, at Hogwarts, the attention may be even more pronounced. You'll be meeting children who grew up hearing your name in bedtime stories. Great, Harry groaned. Just what I need, more people staring at me like I'm some kind of. He broke off abruptly, his entire body tensing. The ice cream in his spoon froze solid, a thin layer of frost spreading across the table's surface. Harry? I asked, instantly alert. What's wrong? Someone's watching us, he whispered. Not like the others. Someone, wrong. I followed his gaze to a dark alley across from the ice cream parlor. At first, I saw nothing, but then, a flicker of movement, a shadow that seemed denser than it should be. Remus, I said quietly, on our 6. Alley entrance. Remus didn't turn his head, but I saw his hand slide casually toward his wand. How many? At least one, Harry answered before I could. But there's something else, something not human. As if triggered by Harry's words, a deep growl emanated from the alley. Hedwig took flight with an alarmed screech, circling overhead as shoppers near the sound began backing away nervously. We need to move, I decided, rising smoothly from my chair. Too many civilians here. Agreed, Remus said, throwing some coins on the table. Harry, stay between us. We began moving calmly but purposefully away from the area, angling toward the leaky cauldron. We hadn't gone more than 20 paces when the attack came. A massive black shape burst from the alley, a hellhound, but unlike any I'd seen before. Its eyes glowed purple instead of red, and its claws left smoking gouges in the cobblestones. Behind it came two figures in black robes and silver masks, Death Eaters. Screams erupted as shoppers fled in panic. I uncapped Riptide, the celestial bronze blade springing to full length in my hand. Beside me, Remus had his wand out, firing a spell that hit one of the Death Eaters squarely in the chest, sending them flying backward. "Get to the leaky cauldron," Remus shouted. "The port key is our best chance." We ran, dodging through the crowd of terrified shoppers. The hellhound bounded after us, unnaturally fast and focused solely on Harry. I dropped back, slashing at it with Riptide as it lunged. The blade connected, but instead of dissolving into dust as it should have, the monster merely yelped and continued its pursuit, a greenish ichor seeping from the wound. "It's been enhanced with dark magic," Remus called, firing another spell over his shoulder. "Regular weapons won't work properly." "Now he tells me," I muttered, ducking as the remaining Death Eater sent a jet of purple light my way. It hit a nearby shop sign, which instantly shriveled and turned to ash. We were almost to the brick wall entrance when disaster struck. A second hellhound leaped from a side street, cutting off our escape route. This one was even larger than the first, with the same purple eyes and an unnatural intelligence in its gaze. "Back to back," I ordered, pulling Harry between Remus and me. "Harry, stay down." But Harry had other ideas. He pulled his new wand from his pocket with one hand, while the other reached for the trident pendant he always wore around his neck. As his fingers closed around it, the pendant expanded into his full-sized celestial bronze trident. "Whoa, kid!" I gasped. "What happened to keeping the demigod stuff secret?" "Life or death situation," Harry replied grimly, the confidence in his voice belying his 12 years. "You said that was the exception." He was right, but the sight of a young wizard holding both a wand and a glowing bronze trident was definitely going to raise questions later. The Death Eater seemed momentarily stunned by Harry's transformation, giving Remus the opening he needed to fire a spell that wrapped the black-robed figure in tight cords. But the hellhounds were still advancing, circling us with predatory focus. "Harry," I said quietly, "we need to combine forces here. Like we practiced." He nodded, understanding immediately. We'd spent years training for this exact scenario, coordinating our godly powers for maximum effect. "Remus," Harry called, "when I say now, cast the strongest shield charm you can, directly around yourself." "What are you going to?" Remus began. "Trust me." Harry cut him off. I closed my eyes briefly, reaching out with my senses to locate any source of water. There, a large fountain in the square about 50 yards back. Not ideal, but it would have to do. "Ready?" I asked Harry. He nodded, his face set with determination I'd seen 100 times during training. This kid who wasn't really a kid anymore, who'd been preparing for this moment since he was 4 years old. "Now, Remus!" Harry shouted. As Remus cast his shield charm, Harry raised his trident with his left hand and his wand with his right. I summoned every drop of water from the distant fountain, feeling it surge toward us in a massive wave. At the same moment, Harry channeled his Zeus-given power through the trident, calling down lightning from the suddenly darkening sky. What happened next was why Harry Potter was unlike any demigod or wizard who had ever existed. Instead of simply directing the lightning at the hellhounds, Harry channeled it through his wand first, infusing it with wizarding magic. The result was a blast of electrified magical energy that combined with my incoming wave to create a swirling vortex of storm and sea. The hellhounds were caught in the maelstrom, howling as magical lightning arced through the water, disrupting whatever dark enhancements had been placed on them. Within seconds, they dissolved into dust, not the golden dust of normal monsters, but a sickly green powder that hissed and evaporated on contact with the wet cobblestones. As quickly as it had formed, the storm dissipated, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Remus lowered his shield charm, looking at Harry with newfound respect and a touch of apprehension. "That," he said finally, was not a spell they teach at Hogwarts. Harry grinned weakly, swaying slightly from the effort. I caught him before he could fall, noting with concern how pale he'd gone. Nice work, lightning boy, I said, steadying him. But maybe let's save the godly light show for when we don't have an audience. I nodded toward the few brave shopkeepers and ministry officials who were cautiously emerging from their hiding places, staring at us in shock. Right, Harry muttered, quickly shrinking his trident back to pendant form and pocketing his wand. Sorry. Don't apologize, Remus said firmly. You just saved our lives. But Percy's right, we need to leave before the ministry officials start asking questions I'm not prepared to answer. We hurried toward the captive Death Eater, who was still struggling against Remus's magical bindings. With a quick spell, Remus removed the silver mask, revealing a gaunt face contorted with hatred. Travers, Remus identified him. I thought you were in Azkaban. The Dark Lord rewards his faithful, the man spat. And he will reward me beyond measure when I deliver the boy to him. Yeah, that's not happening, I said, leveling Riptide at his throat. Who sent you? Voldemort's supposed to be gone. Travers laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. Gone. The Dark Lord cannot be vanquished so easily. He grows stronger each day, and soon he will return to claim what is his. His gaze fixed on Harry with disturbing intensity. Your blood, Potter. That's what he needs. And he will have it, whether today or tomorrow or next year. Before we could question him further, there was a loud crack, and a squad of wizards in official-looking robes appeared nearby. Orders, Remus hissed. Ministry Magical Law Enforcement. We need to go, now. With a last disgusted look at Travers, we slipped away through the gathering crowd, Hedwig swooping down to perch on Harry's shoulder as we reached the brick wall. Remus tapped the pattern quickly, and we ducked through into the relative safety of the Leaky Cauldron's back courtyard. Will they come after us? Harry asked, glancing anxiously over his shoulder. Not immediately, Remus assured him. They'll be focused on Travers and the aftermath. But we should return to camp as quickly as possible. We hurried through the pub, ignoring the curious stares of the patrons, and made our way back to the storeroom where we'd arrived. The boot portkey was still there, waiting to take us home. Remus, are you coming with us? Harry asked. No, the wizard sighed. I need to stay and control the narrative. Dumbledore will want to know exactly what happened, and it's better if I speak to the Aurors directly rather than having them piece things together from witness accounts. He smiled ruefully. Don't worry, I'll simply tell them you panicked and performed accidental magic. It happens often enough with untrained young wizards. But what about the trident? Harry worried. And the water? That wasn't wizard magic. Most witnesses will rationalize what they saw, Remus explained. The human mind, wizard or not, tends to interpret the impossible in ways it can understand. As for the few who might have seen clearly. He shrugged. There's a reason the wizarding world hasn't discovered demigods, despite centuries of coexistence. I suspected there was more to that story, but now wasn't the time to press for details. We should go before the portkey window closes, I said, checking my watch. Ready, Harry? He nodded, but hesitated before touching the boot. Remus, what Travers said about Voldemort wanting my blood. Is that why the attacks have been increasing? They're trying to capture me for some kind of ritual. Remus's expression grew grave. It's possible. There are dark magical rituals that use blood for resurrections and similar foul purposes. Dumbledore has suspected something like this might be Voldemort's aim. Great, Harry muttered. Just what I needed to hear before starting school. Hey, I said, bumping his shoulder lightly. One quest at a time, remember. First step is surviving wizard school. Dark Lord resurrection rituals can wait till at least Christmas break. That earned a small smile. Harry turned to Remus, impulsively giving him a quick hug. Thanks for everything today. Will I see you before I leave for Hogwarts? Count on it, Remus promised. I wouldn't miss seeing you off at King's Cross. Now go, quickly. Hedwig knows the way to camp, she'll meet you there. As if understanding, the snowy owl gave a dignified hoot and took flight, disappearing through an open window. Harry and I grasped the port key together, and I spoke the return activation phrase, Strawberry Fields. The world dissolved once more into chaotic spinning, and we landed with a thud back in the alley in Manhattan. This time, neither of us stayed upright. Definitely prefer Pegasi, I groaned, picking myself up for the second time that day. Agreed, Harry said, collecting his shrunken packages which had scattered on impact. Though I'm looking forward to trying wizard brooms. Remus says they're amazing. Of course you are, I sighed. Son of Zeus, obsessed with flying. Some stereotypes exist for a reason. The ride back to camp was subdued, both of us processing the attack and its implications. Harry kept taking out his wand, examining it with a thoughtful expression. Something wrong with it? I asked. No, he said slowly. Just thinking about what happened when I used it with my trident. I've never felt power like that before, like the magic and the godly energy were amplifying each other instead of fighting. He glanced at me. Is that what the prophecy meant? Should powers unite, the darkness dies? Maybe, I admitted. The way you handled both simultaneously was pretty impressive. Usually when you try to use both power sources, they end up clashing. It felt different this time, Harry said. Like they finally clicked together instead of grinding against each other. He twirled the wand between his fingers. I think this was the missing piece, having an actual focus for the wizard side of me. I considered this as we crossed into Camp Half-Blood territory. Makes sense. You've had years to train with your trident for the demigod stuff. Maybe the wand balances the equation. Chiron was waiting for us at the big house, his tail swishing anxiously. You're late, he noted. And you look like you've been in battle. Funny story, I began. We were attacked in Diagon Alley, Harry cut to the chase. Death Eaters and magically enhanced hellhounds. They were trying to capture me for some kind of blood ritual to bring back Voldemort. Chiron's expression darkened. I feared something like this might occur. Come inside, Dumbledore has already contacted us through the fire. Sure enough, Albus Dumbledore's face was visible in the green flames of the hearth, his expression grave but his eyes twinkling as they landed on Harry. Ah, Harry, he said, his voice crackling slightly through the magical connection. I'm relieved to see you safe. Remus has just informed me of the incident in Diagon Alley. It was a coordinated attack, Harry reported, slipping naturally into the mission debriefing format we'd taught him at camp. They knew exactly where we'd be and when. And the hellhounds were different, enhanced somehow. Yes, Dumbledore nodded. Dark magic can temporarily strengthen certain creatures, though the effect is usually unstable and ultimately fatal to the subject. What concerns me more is the coordination between Death Eaters and Greek monsters. It suggests a level of cooperation we haven't seen before. Travers mentioned Voldemort getting stronger, I added. Said he needed Harry's blood for something. As I feared, Dumbledore sighed. There are ancient dark rituals that require the blood of an enemy to restore physical form. If Voldemort is pursuing such a path, he would indeed target Harry specifically. So what do we do? Harry asked. Cancel Hogwarts? On the contrary, Dumbledore replied. Hogwarts remains one of the safest places in the wizarding world, far more secure than Diagon Alley. Additionally, you must continue your magical education if you are to face these threats effectively. But the attack proves they're actively hunting him, I protested. Wouldn't he be safer here, behind the camp's magical barriers? Percy, Chiron said gently, we've discussed this. The prophecies are clear, Harry must walk in both worlds to fulfill his destiny. Keeping him isolated at camp would only delay the inevitable confrontation and deprive him of the tools he needs. I knew they were right, but the thought of sending Harry off to a wizard castle without me there to watch his back made my stomach knot with anxiety. We'd been a team for 8 years. How was I supposed to just let him go? It's okay, Percy, Harry said, reading my expression perfectly. I'll be careful. And Dumbledore will be right there at Hogwarts. He grinned. Besides, you've been training me since I was 4. I think I can handle a few wizard kids. It's not the wizard kids I'm worried about, I muttered. After finalizing security arrangements for Harry's journey to Hogwarts, Dumbledore's face disappeared from the flames, leaving us to unpack Harry's school supplies and prepare for his departure. The remaining weeks of August passed in a blur of training sessions, last-minute preparations, and bittersweet moments as Harry's time at camp drew to a close. The night before we were set to leave for London, via a more comfortable magical transportation method this time, something called a connecting flow network, I found Harry sitting on the dock at the canoe lake, his feet dangling in the water. Couldn't sleep? I asked, settling beside him. He shook his head. Too excited. And nervous. And. He hesitated. A little scared. That's normal, I assured him. New quests are always scary, even for veteran heroes. It's not just that, Harry admitted. I had the dream again last night. About Voldemort. But this time it was clearer, I could see him. Or what's left of him. I tensed. What did you see? He's not whole, Harry said, struggling to find the words. More like a spirit possessing something small. And he was talking to Wormtail, the wizard who betrayed my parents. They were planning something at Hogwarts, something to do with a tournament. This was concerning. Harry's dream visions had proven unerringly accurate over the years. Did you tell Chiron? Yeah, he's passing the information to Dumbledore. Harry skimmed his hand over the water's surface, creating small ripples that glowed faintly in the moonlight, his Poseidon heritage responding to his touch. Percy, what if I can't do this? What if I go to Hogwarts and I'm terrible at everything? Not possible, I said confidently. You're the kid who mastered sword fighting by age 6, who can summon lightning precise enough to knock apples off trees without burning them, who figured out how to breathe underwater before I could even teach you the technique. You're going to be amazing. Harry smiled slightly. But that's demigod stuff. This is different. No, it's not, I insisted. It's all part of who you are. And who you are is pretty incredible, Harry Potter. Thanks to you, he said quietly. If you hadn't found me that night. I ruffled his hair, the gesture that had become our shorthand for everything we didn't always say aloud. I think the fates knew what they were doing when they put you in my path. You were meant to be my annoying little brother. And you were meant to be my overprotective big brother, he shot back, but he was grinning now. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the moonlight on the water and listening to the distant sounds of harpies patrolling the camp borders. You'll write, right? Harry finally asked. Or use the mirror. Every day, I promised. And I'll visit at Christmas. Dumbledore already cleared it with McGonagall. And if something happens, if there's trouble, you'll come? Wild Pegasi couldn't keep me away, I assured him. But you won't need me to rescue you. You're not that scared 4-year-old anymore, Harry. You're a hero in your own right now. The next morning was a whirlwind of last-minute packing, tearful goodbyes from younger campers who idolized Harry, and stern reminders from Chiron about maintaining secrecy regarding his demigod abilities. Annabeth presented him with a Yankees cap identical to her invisibility cap. It doesn't turn you invisible, she explained, but I worked with the Hecate cabin to enchant it. If you channel a little power into it, it'll create a minor mist illusion, enough to make people briefly overlook you in an emergency. Wow, Harry said, genuinely touched. Thanks, Annabeth. Just don't use it to sneak into the restricted section of the library, she warned, then winked. At least, not without taking detailed notes for me. The journey to London was surprisingly smooth, thanks to the enhanced flu connection Dumbledore had arranged. One moment we were standing in the big house fireplace, the next we were stepping out into a cozy room in the leaky cauldron, where Remus waited to escort us to King's Cross Station the following morning. Everything set, he assured us. Dumbledore has arranged additional security for the train, though it will be discreet. No need to worry the other students. Platform 9 3/4 was even more chaotic than Diagon Alley had been. The Hogwarts Express gleamed scarlet against the platform, steam billowing as families said their goodbyes. Harry drew curious stares and whispers as we made our way through the crowd, Hedwig's cage balanced precariously atop his trunk. "You've got everything?" I asked for the dozenth time that morning. "Wand? Trident pendant? Emergency drachmas for Iris messages?" "Yes, Percy," Harry sighed, but his exasperation was half-hearted at best. I could see the nervousness beneath his confident exterior. "Remember what we practiced," I continued, helping him load his trunk onto the train. "If you sense a monster, trust my instincts, get somewhere private if possible, and use whichever power set is most appropriate to the threat," Harry recited. "I remember. And if you have any more dreams about Voldemort, tell Dumbledore immediately, then contact you through the mirror." He gave me a pointed look. "Percy, I've got this." "Really?" "I know you do," I said, suddenly feeling awkward. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading for weeks. "You're going to miss me," Harry finished, his voice softening. "Like crazy," I admitted. "Me too." And then he did something he hadn't done in years, he threw his arms around me in a fierce hug. "Thank you," he whispered. "For everything." I hugged him back just as tightly, not caring who saw. "You're going to be amazing, Lightning Boy. Show those wizards what a son of Zeus can do." "And Poseidon," he added with a grin, pulling back. "Right," I laughed. "Can't forget the cooler god." Thunder rumbled overhead, despite the clear sky. "Oh, relax, Dad," Harry called upward. "You're cool too." The final whistle blew, and students began hurrying onto the train. "You'd better go," Remus said, joining us after giving us a moment for our goodbye. "Find a compartment before they're all taken." Harry nodded, suddenly looking very young in his new school robes. "I'll write tonight," he promised. "And I'll use the mirror tomorrow to tell you all about the sorting." "You'd better," I warned. "Or I really will send Blackjack to check on you." With a final smile, Harry boarded the train. We watched as he found an empty compartment and leaned out the window to wave as the train began to move. "He'll be fine," Remus assured me, seeing my worried expression. "Hogwarts is well protected, and Harry is far more prepared than any first year has a right to be." "I know," I sighed. "It's just. For 8 years, keeping him safe has been my main mission. It's hard to let go." "You haven't failed that mission, Percy," Remus said gently. "You've completed the first phase of it brilliantly. Now it's time for Harry to take the next steps on his own path." As the train rounded a bend and disappeared from view, I noticed a flicker of movement in the shadows near the barrier to the Muggle world. A cloaked figure stood watching, their face obscured. When they noticed my attention, they melted back into the crowd with unnatural speed. "Did you see that?" I asked Remus sharply. He nodded, his hand moving casually toward his wand. "I did. Not a Death Eater, I think, the energy signature feels different." "Not Greek either," I muttered, my hand on Riptide. "Something else." The figure was gone, however, leaving only questions and a lingering sense of unease. Whatever or whoever it was, I had a feeling we hadn't seen the last of them. But for now, Harry was safely on his way to Hogwarts, beginning the next chapter of his extraordinary life. On the Hogwarts Express, Harry settled into his compartment, watching London slide away through the window. The familiar weight of his trident pendant rested against his chest beneath his school robes, a reminder of who he was and where he came from. The door to his compartment slid open, revealing a tall, red-headed boy with a smudge on his nose. "Anyone sitting there?" he asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. "Everywhere else is full." "Go ahead," Harry invited with a smile. The boy sat down, sneaking glances at Harry's forehead before blurting out, "Are you really Harry Potter?" Harry nodded, used to the reaction by now. "And you are?" "Ron Weasley," the boy replied eagerly. "Is it true you grew up with Muggles? What was that like?" Before Harry could answer, the door slid open again. A girl with bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth stood in the doorway, already wearing her Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad?" "A boy named Neville's lost one," she said in a bossy sort of voice. "No toads here," Ron replied, but Harry leaned forward, something about the girl catching his interest. "I haven't seen a toad," he said, "but I could help look if you want. I'm pretty good at finding things." The girl's eyes widened as she noticed the lightning bolt scar on Harry's forehead. "You're Harry Potter. I've read all about you. You're in Modern Magical History and The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts." "Don't believe everything you read," Harry said with a wry smile, thinking of all the demigod myths that got the details hilariously wrong. "Books tend to miss the full story." The girl looked intrigued rather than offended. "I'm Hermione Granger," she introduced herself. "And I'd appreciate the help. Neville's quite upset." As Harry rose to assist in the toad hunt, he felt a surge of excitement. This was it, the beginning of his life in the wizarding world. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever prophecies awaited fulfillment, he was ready to face them, armed with his wand, his trident, and 8 years of training from the best big brother a demigod could ask for. Outside the train, high above the English countryside, a massive bald eagle soared, keeping pace with the Hogwarts Express. And far below, in a stream that ran parallel to the tracks, the water occasionally surged in rhythmic patterns that matched the train's speed, 2 gods, watching over their extraordinary son as he journeyed toward his destiny. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.